this evening. We have welcome, which hopefully we've done. We'll say an opening prayer. And then, I'd like to give a short update for some of you on what's been going on within the Lutheran Church Reserve Synod and the resolution that they passed at the July Synodical Convention. So we'll do a short update on that. And then our speaker tonight is Dr. RobertCarter. And maybe you know who he is. We'll be introducing him a little later. Then we'll have a few announcements, and we'll close with the Lord's Prayer and praise the Lord with I'd like to tell the story. So before we get started here, let's open with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so very much for bringing us all back together this evening and for bringing Dr. Carter here to share his knowledge with us. We ask that you bless his presentation and that you open each of us to hear the truth of your words tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so I said I wanted to start with a little update about what has been happening in the LCMS. And those of you who have been at our meetings over the past couple of years know that we, in addition to talking about creation at our meetings, have also been working to advocate for creation within the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And I know that many of you are not members of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, but hopefully we're not the only denomination I know that has had some issues with creation. So perhaps you can use this as a takeaway to help you with advocating in your own denomination. But starting in the spring of 2017, we kind of became aware of some issues particularly regarding the age of the earth in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And so, again, our church is structured so that it's on a 3-year schedule where we have circuits which meet the first year. Then those circuits are consolidated into districts every the second year, and then the third year we have a national convention. So in the spring of 2017, we met with some local pastors and we created an overture to the convention regarding the age of the earth. And you'll find copies of the overture that was written for the Rocky Mountain District on the table as you come in the door there if you're interested in reading it. In the fall of 2017, then, that overture was passed unanimously by all the circuits in Denver. And the circuits have representatives for each of the churches, a pastor and a lay person. Then in June of 2018, the same overture was passed by 60% at the Rocky Mountain District Convention. So it's making its way up through the layers of the church. Then in March of this year, we made a special effort to put an emphasis on the age of the earth and what we believed about that, what the Bible says about the age of the earth. So in March of 2019, we started with the Missouri Association for Creation. They held the Young Earth Conference at our Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. And actually Dr. Carter was one of the speakers at that conference. And then in May, we held a conference here, the LCMS Conference on Creation and Education, where we had Dr. Jason Lyle here, we had Mr. Mike Ridley, where we had several speakers from within the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod to talk about how we're teaching creation in our schools and in our colleges and seminaries. And then in June of 2019, we had the Age of the Earth Conference over at Peacemaker. Many of you attended that. We had 4 scientists talk about how their research showed that the Earth was young. It confirmed the biblical age of the Earth. And then finally, the Society of Creation, which is a group that was formed by Dr. Joel Heck from Concordia University in Austin and Dr. Gary Locklear from Concordia University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They held a conference on the age of the earth at the International Synod in St. Louis. And so we were really hoping that those 2 conferences being in St. Louis would reach some of our seminarians and some of our church leadership. So we have quite a few activities going on in 2019 to put an emphasis on the age of the earth. While we were doing that, we also sent out the resolution that we passed for the Rocky Mountain District, the overture. An overture is prior to it being passed, and a resolution is what is passed at the convention. So sometimes I may refer to it as an overture and sometimes a resolution. But the resolution that came out of the Rocky Mountain District, we publicized that by sending it out to various other districts in the LCMS. And many of the other districts picked it up. I think there are 37 or 39 districts. I can't remember exactly how many districts there are. But several of them picked up our resolution and submitted it. And then some of them submitted it with a few changes. But most of them very much resembled the resolution that we had passed here in the Rocky Mountain District. The faculties also then of the St. Louis Seminary and the Fort Wayne Seminary also submitted their own resolution, which was somewhat different than the ones that were submitted by the Rocky Mountain District. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's a copy of that one back on the table as well. And in July of 2019, it was finally time for the LCMS Synodical Convention, which took place in Tampa, Florida. And so as you go through each of these conventions, the overtures go first to a committee. The committee analyzes all the overtures that come in. So the more overtures that you get coming in, the more attention they get. And then that committee decides what gets to the floor of the convention. So in our case, the resolution went to the Committee on Theology and Church Relations, and they went to hear about that. We had 5 speakers from the Rocky Mountain District, and one of them is here tonight, Reverend Michael, who spoke on behalf of our resolution, and in particular on concerns about the age of the earth and what it was doing to the faith of our children. And so we had 5 of them. There were many speakers. This was a very controversial resolution. So there were many speakers. We had a couple that definitely spoke against it. And one of the concerns was that one of the people who spoke against it was on the Board of Regents of our Fort Wayne Seminary. So that was concerning. We also had Mr. Walter Gissing. Some of you who are members of the LCMS will remember him as being part of Seminex in the 1970s, and he spoke in favor also of the resolution. So the committee discussed this in private. You're given a chance to comment, but they don't have to take any of your suggestions. So the committee discussed that. They had chosen to send to the floor the overture that was written by the 2 seminaries, as opposed to the overture that was written by the Rocky Mountain District. And they did not change their opinion as a result of any discussion that went on in the committee hearings. So it went to the floor as the resolution that the seminaries had put together. And it was not as clear, and it did not support the young earth as well as the one that the Rocky Mountain District had proposed. So I don't want to minimize what happened in the LCMS. I think it's amazing that as a church body, we actually affirmed our belief in biblical creation, in a 6-day creation, in a relatively young earth. But we do still have some concerns, and we still have some work to do. The good things about this resolution was it reaffirmed the 1932 and the 1973 statements on creation. And again, if you're not an LCMS member, you're probably not familiar with those, but those statements basically confirmed the 6-day creation and the historicity of Adam and Eve. So they affirmed that God created the world in 6 natural days, and that Adam and Eve were real historical figures. That death came into the world as a result of Adam's sin, and it did repudiate belief in long ages. And we're the first major church body to do this. So this was great news. And many of the Christian news organizations, Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministries International, picked this up and published news articles on it. And so that's wonderful, and that's great for actually holding our feet to the fire to make sure that we really teach what we say we believe. So there are many good things that came out of this. And Ken Ham actually, in one of his blogs, challenged some of the other denominations to do the same and to affirm their belief in biblical creation. So that was excellent. also some things that we weren't so happy with, and I just tell you this because I want you to understand that, okay, we're not done. Now that we've passed that resolution, we still have a lot of work to do. The resolution that came from the seminaries was not specific on the age of the earth. The Rocky Mountain District one said about 6,000 years. The seminary one says we repudiate anything that talks about long ages, so we don't believe in long ages. Okay, that's great, but that doesn't help our kids a lot. We need to get much more specific than that. It was also, we felt, the group that had worked on getting this resolution through was still weak on asserting that this doctrine should actually be taught in our academic institutions. So even though we passed it and we say we believe it, there's no real force behind it to see that it gets taught in our academic institutions. It also talks about science a lot, and it uses this intersection of faith and science. But it really doesn't define science. So in a lot of cases, a person who wasn't familiar with the area might take a look at what they're saying about science and say, well, this could be evolutionary science. This could be an old Earth, you know. So we want to get much more clear about defining science. It talks about the intersection of faith and science. And again, many of us were concerned about this from the standpoint that, why are we talking about the intersection of faith and science? I mean, if the Bible is our authority, we shouldn't be having discussions about the intersection of faith and science. We can talk about how science affirms what the Bible says, but we don't want to put them on equal level. And so there are still some things that need some improvement in this resolution. So the overture from the committee was presented on the floor of the convention. There was lively discussion about 6 natural days and what natural meant. But in the end, it finally passed by an overwhelming majority in a show of hands vote. And so that was kind of a historic event, and we were thrilled that it passed. If you'd like to see that, we actually have a link to it on our website. So you can go out to the Denver Society of Creation website and just click on it. And you probably have to go into it a ways to actually, all the discussion is there. So I think it runs an hour and 30 minutes total. This was probably the most controversial overture that came out at the convention. And so it runs about an hour and 30 minutes. You have to go into it a ways before you actually get to the vote. But you can see them voting on it, and you can hear President Harrison talking about it afterwards. So what did we learn as we were going through this process? Because this is a long 3-year process with a lot of discussion, a lot of disagreements. We had a lot of things come up. For example, the differences between the Rocky Mountain overture and the overture from the seminaries. So I think from my standpoint, what I learned was that within the LCMS, the lay people and the local pastors overwhelmingly supported biblical creation. There was no doubt about it. There were some cases where, well, I think we have some education to do yet, because some didn't recognize the difference between a 6-day creation and the age of the earth. They felt that if they specified a 6-day creation, then that meant to be on earth. And that's not necessarily true. When did that 6-day creation occur? So I think we have some work from an educational standpoint in there. And then some of the scholars believe in gaps in the genealogies and some don't. And we have a Hebrew scholar at Concordia University in Chicago who is a young earth creationist, but believes that there's room for gaps in the genealogies. So this leaves room open for theistic evolution to creep in, even though they would say that no, even though there could be gaps, that the gaps aren't big enough for it to be older. But it leaves room for doubt. Okay. So really, given those two things, and I think we need to do some education in those areas, the lay people and the local pastors were very supportive. So the bulk of our issues within the Missouri Synod lay with our academic institutions, and I think we'll find that in other denominations as well. At the university and college level, I think there's a great deal of pressure to conform to the secular world, and they're under constant pressure to do that. And then we have a few that are more interested in their own power than in God's word. And one of the things I found as we were going through all of this was that I didn't know a lot about church politics, and I got to find out a lot more than what I really wanted to know about church politics. So they're definitely there. The church politics are probably at least as bad as working for a large corporation and having to deal with those politics. So, and then the hiring practices at the university and seminary level, we found, did not take into account the applicants' beliefs about creation. They didn't ask them what they believed, even though this was a college or university LCMS. They were not required to talk about what they believed. And in one case that we know specifically, older creationists at the university would be given preference over younger creationists. And so that's something that shouldn't be happening in a study that says that they believe, that they don't believe in languages. At the K through 12 level, and some of this came out of the conference that we had in May, we have a shortage of teachers from our universities. And not all teachers are educated with Lutheran or even Christian beliefs. Because of the shortage of teachers, we have many teachers who were educated in a secular environment. And then the use of secular textbooks was widespread. And Barbara Homkamp's here tonight. You've gone, Barbara. But anyway, she has done a lot of study on this, and so she spoke about it at our May conference. But that's another problem. And also then we need to keep up with the secular teaching in science and history in order to stay accredited and enable students to pass standardized tests. So in our science and our history classes, we have to teach what they need in order to pass. And yet what we need to do is say, okay, this is what you need to know to pass, but here's what we believe to be the truth. So the next steps that we'll be doing over the next 3-year cycle. And we've already begun to form a group. There was a core group in Tampa that kind of formed, and we're kind of reaching out from there. We have some church leadership involved. We have work to do over the next 3 years. We'll be working on additional resolutions that would clarify the age of the earth, and hopefully that would confirm that the young earth position is the only position that can be taught in our academic institutions. We need to provide oversight of our academic institutions. Right now there is no oversight. Clarify the definition of science. And in the resolution also there's a lot of, it suggests that pastors should have discussions with their members about creation and about what we believe about creation. And that's good, but we shouldn't be necessarily having discussions on doctrine. It should be more teaching about our doctrine. And so we want to strengthen things in that area as well. So those are some of our goals. We also, of course, want to continue what we're doing here locally through our monthly meetings and our conferences, and really attempts to reach teachers with more apologetic training. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is we'll be attending the Lutheran Education Conference in October. That's going to be in St. Louis. We have a booth there, which was very expensive, by the way. I had no idea it was that expensive to exhibit at a large convention. But we were invited to come to that by the president of the Lutheran Education Association. And so we'll be doing that in October, and hopefully we can reach over 3,000 teachers. There's a little pamphlet that it's in the back. We have tons of them, so if you'd like to have one, you can. I did this for the Synodical Convention. Just since the age of the earth was such a big issue, I tried to hit the major points on why we believe that the earth is round and how science supports that. So we'll be also taking these to the LEA convention. And there are a lot of them back there. If you'd like to have some or you'd like to take them back for your church, you're most welcome to do that. There are a few on the table, and I definitely have a lot more if you'd like to have some. And then also, we hope to continue to offer basic creation apologetics classes. We've done that twice now. Try to do it at least once a year. We missed this last year because of the conferences, but hopefully we'll get back on schedule again. And then continue work to try to provide good textbooks for all academic levels. And one of the things we found here was that Concordia Publishing publishes a lot of our textbooks, has not been taking a stand on creation, and we've not been getting resources from them on creation because of the discussions going on in the church about whether we believe in a young earth or whether we believe or whether we're going to compromise with those people who believe in older. And so, since there are two factions on that, that's one of the reasons that they say they have not been really able to put out textbooks on the subject. And so we're hoping that this resolution will help to guide them in terms of what they're putting into textbooks and helping us to get better textbooks for our schools. Okay, so that's kind of an update on where we are and what we have coming over the next 3 years. And I just wanted to report back to you because obviously this group provided the support that we needed to actually formulate the resolution and get it through all these levels. And so I wanted to report back to you on what the details were and how we did the national approach.
I just want to take a moment to discuss it. What Judy has talked to you about tonight. It was truly exciting. Arvin enjoyed the Tampa Bay Synodical Convention. I did too, and of course Judy did with all that happened. But I think it's really important for all of you to know how important you all are to our group. If it wasn't for your support, not only emotionally, but financially, and giving us energy to see this happen, it would not have happened. Now, I sound like I'm giving the Denver Society of Creation a lot of credit. I cannot tell you how many times when I say this, that Judy and I, through the discussion of this, have said, it's his work. And it truly is. So many things happened through this last 3 years where it all fell into place at the right time, that it had to be a God thing. So just be aware, we appreciate all your help on the mental side of trying to get something like this done. And what we have coming up in the next 3 years, there's going to be some exciting things happen where we can hold the Missouri Synod feet to the coals. So thank you for all of your work and supporting us.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, so tonight we have a wonderful speaker who's with us. We're very thankful to RobertCarter for coming in from Georgia to be able to talk to us tonight. He's done some amazing research. He's actually been a part of a lot of what we've done here. He was a speaker at the conference, at the seminary in March, and he was a speaker at our Age of the Earth conference in June. So he's actually met a lot of people and been involved in a lot of the process here. So we thank him for that as well. So if you're not familiar with Dr. Carter, he is from Creation Ministries International. He has been doing a lot of research in the area of genetics. And tonight he's here to talk to us about how a biblical worldview and what as it relates to science. So welcome, Dr. Carter.
Nope, it's too loud. I don't dare talk, it's way too loud. How's that? Is that better? Yes. Okay, yes. It's still a little too loud. I'm talking really low. Okay, this is my normal speaking voice. Is that okay? Not too loud, no feedback? Still too loud. Okay, how's that? Better?
Still more down?
All right, technology, we got it? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you. Well, hello everybody. Most of you know me. Those of you who don't, my name is RobertCarter. I'm a speaker with Creation Ministries International out of our U.S. offices near Atlanta. I was up here to speak at two churches, I was at a Calvary Chapel down in Castle Rock last night, and then on Sunday, something Baptist. Parker Baptist and Parker. Grace Baptist, okay. And I'll be there in the morning and in the evening. If you're interested, you can look up on our schedule online. What I'm about to present to you is my favorite subject to talk about. But I'm not going to be able to finish because there's just too much to talk about. So what I'm going to try to do is paint you some big ideas. And we're going to go through several big ideas until right about an hour from now, and then we'll stop and we'll answer some questions. I can even think of some big ideas that I'd like to put in this talk that I don't have in here yet. When I've given this to students, I can watch their heads grow. Because people are not challenged with these types of thoughts. And when you challenge someone with these types of thoughts, they say, oh, the world's not quite the way I thought it was. This is things we can use as we're talking with our family, our kids, our grandkids, our friends, with denominational leadership, especially if they want to make a definition of what science is. So yeah, we're going to try to define science, and we're going to fail. But we're going to try. But here we go. First, a lot of this material has already been presented in our Creation magazine, on our website, creation.com. A lot of this has appeared in our Journal of Creation. I know there's some creation junkies out here, and I know we have some subscribers here. But maybe we need a couple more. Journal of Creation is there for you. Easy to figure it out. We're on all the major social media things. We're an information ministry. CMI exists to come to places like this, and we're going to visit around about 1,300 churches and schools and groups around the world this year in multiple different countries. In fact, we have about 30 speakers operating out of 7 international offices. So this is what we do. We come to places like this and we try to answer questions. If you're not signed up for our email newsletter, may I encourage you? About once a week, we're going to send out something new in the world of science, a new idea, a new answer to something that just came up in the media. You might even interview someone who might even be a former evolutionist. You never know what might pop up in your email inbox. It's really good information there. If you'd like to get our email newsletter, here's what our form looks like. We ask for a name, an email address, and a zip code. It's easy. It's not spam. We're not going to fill your inbox up. We're not going to sell your name to anybody else. It's for our own internal uses. It's a good way to stay plugged into the information we're constantly producing. All right, I have a lovely volunteer there who's going to hand this out while I'm speaking. So when it comes by, if you don't want it, no big deal. Just pass it to the person next to you and lay down all the tables. Okay. I'm a marine biologist by training. I spent years scuba diving in Belize, the Bahamas, or being in Florida Keys. It was a tough life. Yeah, we have a lot of nicknames. But marine biology can be a serious career. And I ended up in the genetics lab. So after all these years of scuba diving, I was studying these animals, these beautiful corals, under a microscope, under fluorescent light. They glow. Green, red, white, purple, all sorts of really amazing colors. And my dissertation topic, I was trying to figure out what this stuff was. Because you're not fluorescent, trees aren't fluorescent, the corals are. Well, I never figured out what the purpose of this material was. But what I did figure out, when I did some chemical extractions, that the fluorescent color was coming from a protein. Cool. Well, you're made of proteins and you don't glow. But they do. Well, once I figured out it was a protein, I realized there was a gene behind it. And when I stole the gene for these fluorescent colored proteins and engineered them into these fish, that's when I got my doctorate. So yeah, I made the frankenfish. My doctorate is, at the end part of my doctorate, I was doing genetic engineering. That's kind of scary, isn't it? We're able to now ask questions with genetic engineering that we can't answer. And there are some things coming down the pipe right now that are really scary. And, let me say it this way. Human cloning, stem cell research, reproductive technologies, those are pro-life issues. And if we want to engage a culture on this, we need to make an argument on a pro-life argument, because that is where the deal is. So, one day, someone's going to clone a human being. It's going to happen. We can clone racehorses and dogs. Routinely. Rats, piece of cake. Someone's going to clone a human being. What's our response going to be? Does the person have a soul? Should they hear the gospel? Can they go to heaven? Yes, yes, and yes. You better think that. Because any identical twins in this room? Any identical twins? Anyone know an identical twin? Yeah, those are clones. So it happens naturally. We can do it artificially. What's our response? That's a tough question. All right. First big idea for you. How do you know what you know? That's a fascinating question. How do you know? Well, you have to use your brain. You have to think through something. You have to assume you're awake. You have to assume that your brain wasn't manufactured yesterday by an alien and implanted memories in your brain. Right? You have to make some big philosophical assumptions, and then you got to think. But in today's world, trying to find out if something is true or not is very, very difficult. Because of the amount of information that's out there. Worse, the amount of misinformation. I have what I call Carter's postulate of information contamination. It works like this. For every true thing, there will one day be at least one YouTube video claiming it's not true. But some of those YouTube videos claiming something is not true, they're true. And the thing they're claiming is not true isn't true. And it's really hard, especially for young people, to get through trying to figure things out. This is the nucleus upon which conspiracy theories are based. The amount of information is such that you cannot wade through it single-handedly. And worse, there are people out there who speak very confidently, but they're full of nonsense. And because we're not experts in all fields, we can't know what they're saying is true or not. And when we have an authority figure in our life makes a pronouncement, they're an authority figure. They should be true, right? And we don't have enough knowledge to refute them. I mean, could any one of you go up to a Big Bang physicist and tell him why he's wrong mathematically? I couldn't. I can talk in general terms, but I can't do that math. That's tough. And the worst thing of all, we tend to hang out with people that are more similar to us. That is human nature. We hang out with people who talk like us, look like us, act like us, eat the same foods, listen to the same music, or the same age group. That's human nature. But what makes it really insidious is that Google and YouTube and Facebook do it for us. They pigeonhole us and categorize us and feed us specific bits of information because it keeps us on their platforms. If they give us something we disagree with, we might leave and go somewhere else. So we, as a society, have been divided up into little bins and spoon-fed information, which is why when two different people with different backgrounds go on Google and they search for things, they get different search results. Now, that's not evil on their part, it's smart on their part. They're trying to get advertising dollars. But it's insidious on a societal level because we don't talk to each other anymore. We are never forced, or rarely forced, to be in the same room with someone and get along. Because we can go our merry way online, or in a group like this. Any evolutionists in this group? Of course, this is a special group. I understand that. Alright, so knowing what we know is hard. We gotta start somewhere. You know where I start? God. God is, therefore I can know. God is fill in the blank about character or attribute of God. That is why I can trust this universe, trust the world, and trust that I'm seeing things that are real. The evolutionist doesn't have that. In fact, a lot of them, if they're honest with it, there's no reason to know anything. What is science? Is a fascinating question. A lot of different ways to approach this. Here's one way I thought of. What if science was just an interpretive filter of reality? Science is an approach, a way of thinking. Okay, what if it was? What if reality was these vertical red bars, and your way of thinking was the gray bars? A couple of points to make. First, can you see that even if your way of thinking is wonky, you can still get some things right? Evolution. It absolutely gets some things right. Absolutely. There are predictions evolutionary theory makes, and they're right there. Yep, sure enough, works out great. But you never hear them talking apart the parts that they miss. They hate talking about the origin of life. They don't like talking about the origin of complexity. They don't like talking about the power of natural selection. They just assume a lot of things. But they absolutely do get some things right. It doesn't mean they're correct. Now, I'm not claiming over here that I have a perfect way of thinking or that my approach to reality is just right. I would never do that. But can you see that the more closely you align your way of thinking to reality, the more things you'll understand and the more you get right? Does that make sense? Okay. What is evolution? What's the most common definition we hear? It's just change over time, right? I've heard it 1,000 times. That people, when I say, yeah, things change over time. Oh, then you believe in evolution? No. But of course things change over time. You don't look like Adam and Eve. I don't think Adam and Eve were white. I don't think there's any other people here. I'm looking at the audience. I think most all of you have a very deep European ancestry. Maybe some Native American parts in here, something like that. But I'm looking at a predominantly European group here. You don't look like Adam and Eve look like. Because they had to carry the genes for everybody. And if you put all the people together in the world, you don't get white people. Okay, so is evolution change over time? No. I believe in change over time. I'm not an evolutionist. Evolution must, if you're trying to define it, it must include the phrase common ancestry. Evolution is the belief that enough change over enough time can lead to the common ancestry of all things. Because what if the change goes backwards? What if it goes downhill? What if it goes in a circle? The peppered moss turned black, you know, the peppered moss turned white again. It went in a circle. There's no net change. It's not a good evidence of evolution. So, I'm going to attempt to prove to you now that all science is philosophy. I've been hinting at it already. I had to say, you have to assume you're not dreaming. You have to assume that things are real. That's philosophy, okay? I have a PhD. What does that stand for? Yeah, Powell, higher and deeper. No. What does a PhD stand for? A doctor of what philosophy? There was a philosophy I was absolutely trained in. Absolutely infused every single thing in every single course I ever took in all of my college education. What was the philosophy? The fact that none of you knew it for a minute or so is shocking, but it is expected. Because Darwin and company don't want you to know this. And they don't want their students to know this. The philosophy that I was trained in is called naturalism. What's an ism? It's a belief structure. Calvinism, theism. I'm trying to think of other isms out there. There's lots of isms out there, right? Naturalism is a belief that nature explains everything. It's the belief, the philosophical assumption, that everything that's ever happened in the universe, no matter where you are or when you are, can be explained with natural processes. Notice that if naturalism is true, there's absolutely no need for God. From the Big Bang until today, God is completely irrelevant. We wonder why we struggle to promote theism in a naturalistic society. Because God has no place in that society. If you take naturalism and you apply, I'm a biologist, I study life. You take naturalism and apply that to the study of life, you will get evolution. Always. Which is why naturalism came about 200 years before Darwin. Naturalism popped up in the Enlightenment era. And then the philosophers, not the scientists, the philosophers said, okay, well, when we apply naturalism, that means directly the earth must be very, very old. Because if you need natural processes that you can see today, you know what? Things in nature happen really slowly. Oh, by the way, there's no miracles. There's no flood. There's no flood. You don't have all that energy to explain the fossil record and stuff, so you know what? It must have taken millions of years. And then about 100 years later, here comes Charles Darwin. Naturalism plus biology equals evolution. But I'm not a naturalist. I'm a theist. I believe in God. If you take theism of some form and apply that to biology, you will get some form of creation. And there's several different types of creation, aren't there? Aliens did it. Old Earth creation. Progressive creation. Or, I like the phrase biblical creation. I know a lot of people have tried to use that word biblical on their particular viewpoint of different doctrinal things, some of which I don't agree with. So it's uncomfortable, but when you read the Bible, if you just take the Bible as it reads, boom, 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 the reason why the church for over a millennium, thought the whole entire universe is only a few thousand years old is because that's what the Bible plainly teaches. In fact, this is what it teaches. I wish there was a phrase in that first chapter of Genesis that was ambiguous. I wish there was a place where I could add millions of years, because then I wouldn't be so embarrassed in a secular world. My life would be so much easier if the universe really was billions of years old. But I can't find any. There are lots of ways in Hebrew to express long periods of time. You see them when God is making promises to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and prophesying about Jesus and things like that. There's lots of ways you can do future things, but you can turn them around in the reverse. God could have said a long period of time, any time, place in there, and whew, problem solved. But he didn't. And so we're stuck with the plain words of Scripture versus what? Not versus science, versus naturalism, which is a philosophy. If we can understand that, the problem is when we're talking to people, they naturally resist this conversation because it's uncomfortable. It's very, very difficult to get someone to have an honest philosophical conversation about the underpinnings of what they think is reality. But one of the reasons for that is because in all of our educational system, no one touches stuff like this. What is natural selection? Can someone please try to define for me natural selection? Raise your hand and you do it. Go for it. Who's brave? Sir?
Survival of the fittest.
Wrong. Someone else want to try? Survival of the fittest is a phrase that Herbert Spencer, Darwin's friend, invented because he didn't like natural selection. And Darwin said, oh, Spencer's got this other phrase called survival of the fittest, and he kind of liked it. It's also wrong, but everything Darwin talked about was based on survival, which is not what he said, but that's all the examples that he used. You want to try?
How about a supernatural selector?
Natural selection, a supernatural selector? That'd be unnatural selection. Or supernatural selection, yes. Sir?
Blind preference for one species, one area over another?
Blind preference for one type over another. Why are we struggling to define this? Yes, sir, in the back. Try it.
Well, I guess to me it's the concept that nature can actually select something, that it has some sort of intelligence behind it.
No. No one ever intended this phrase to mean that nature is alive, active, or thinking. In English, we don't have a way to express things that happen by themselves automatically by default at random. We call that natural. Even though nature is an ancient Roman goddess, we don't have a way in English to say that. By natural, it means it happens by itself, randomly. What? Wait a minute. Is this not the center point of Darwinian evolution? Why can't we define the term? Because they don't want us to. No one has ever challenged you on this. Our society flunks the test on the most basic level of evolutionary knowledge, and almost everyone does this. Natural selection. See, it's not magic. It's not like nature can think. It's not survival of the fittest, because oak trees live for hundreds of years and don't die when they reproduce. But salmon die when they reproduce. You can be perfectly superior to something else and not die. It works like this. Imagine that there's a mountain here. And on the top of the mountain is really dry. But a river runs at the base of the mountain, is really swampy down there. And there's a bunch of oak trees of one species. But within that oak tree species, there are different genes. And some of the gene combinations help an oak tree tolerate dry soil. And some of the gene combinations help an oak tree tolerate damp, moist, and oxid soil. Swamp versus dry. We're okay so far? Imagine that an oak tree lives for 100 years before it dies. And it reproduces a couple times and then dies. I'm just making that up. What happens over 1,000 years? 10 generations of oak trees. If the genes for these different traits are randomly through the population initially, who's going to produce more acorns on the top of the mountain? The ones with the genes that like dry roots, or the ones with the genes that like wet roots? Yeah, okay, how about the bottom of the mountain? So over time, we would expect, over many generations, the genes to sort themselves naturally, to the point where if you do a study on the forest, you would look at there's different genes in the bottom of the mountain than the top of the mountain. But it's still the same species. Nobody died. Okay, let's go back to the term survival of the fittest. Who's the most fit? Is the biggest, the strongest, the fastest? No, no, no. It's the one who has the most number of offspring in the next generation. That is the definition of fitness. It's essentially he or she who dies with the most offspring wins. And it doesn't matter how you get there, which is why Genghis Khan was the best evolutionist in world history. Because he is the ancestor of 1 out of every 200 people alive on Earth today. How did he do that? By raping and pillaging his way all the way across Asia into Europe, and his sons did it and his grandsons did it. One of his grandsons or great-grandsons founded a dynasty in China. He's got like 100 million descendants today. Maybe 10, I don't know. It's just amazing, and that's only 700 years. He won the genetic lottery by killing other people. This is one big problem in evolutionary theory, under naturalism, under evolution. You can't define good and evil. At the root is whoever wins, wins. Why is murder wrong? Think about it. That guy's got stuff. You know what? If I go kill him and take his stuff and give it to my children will have a higher probability of reaching adulthood and having children of their own. What's wrong with that? That's what Genghis Khan did, and he won. All right, natural selection. Not magic, nature's not thinking, not survival of the fittest. It is differential reproduction. If Charles Darwin used that phrase in Origin of Species, no one would have bought the book. Let me read you something from Darwin. Now I know this is highfalutin 1800s languages with sentences go on for pages. commas where they shouldn't be, and things like that. But this is from his book, Variations of Animals and Plants Under Domestication. He wrote this 9 years after the origin of species. Just follow me. In the long course of ages, notice he needs millions of years. The severe and often recurrent struggle for existence will be determined that those variations, however slight, which are favorable shall be preserved or selected, and those which are unfavorable shall be destroyed. Notice, destroyed, struggle, existence. He's using life and death terminology, even though he knows it's not life and death terminology. It's funny how he did that, isn't it? And so we have in our brain, it's about survival, and we know it's not. Let me give you an example. All of you know this. Remember back in the day when cars had buttons on the radio? All right. Remember when you're driving out of town and you go to put your favorite radio station on and you're a little too far away? Instead of hearing it, you hear and you're trying to listen to the ball game, right? It's like, oh no, it's going to hit a home run, and you'll never hear it. You miss the game. What if you put that on a loop and just heard it for 1,000 years? Do you think it would become more clear? No. There's something we now know in the modern world. It's called a signal-to-noise ratio. In order to hear a signal, it has to be clear. It has to rise above the noise. Look what he just said here. Where's the, sorry, I got a laser pointer here. However slight, low signal. Severe and often recurrent struggle, high noise. He's saying something that doesn't make any sense at all. He's saying it doesn't matter how slight the signal is, given enough time, it will rise above the noise. That, my friends, is not true. Darwin is wrong at his core. Selection does work for extreme variance, which is why sickle cell anemia is very common in Central Africa. It is a debilitating mutation. It is not fun to be a carrier of sickle cell anemia. It hurts. If you're a double carrier, you're not going to live very long. But what happens is there was a single amino acid change in one of the hemoglobin molecule that's inside your red blood cells. And under low oxygen conditions, those hemoglobin molecules form a crystal. And it's pointy. And what that does is it rips apart the malaria parasite that affects red blood cells. So if you're a carrier of sickle cell anemia in a malaria area, you're much more likely to survive to adulthood and have children. That's what natural selection can do. But wait a minute, it focused on something that's bad. Yeah, because it's better to be sick than to be dead. And in genetics, it's very easy to break something. It's really easy to break something. The skin color? That's a gene on the end of chromosome 16. I have 2 identical copies, which means I came from an inbred population called early Europeans. And I don't produce a lot of melanin, which is a good thing when you live up north. Because in cold winters, when there's lots of clouds and you hardly get any sunlight, my ancestors were able to make enough vitamin D to survive with only a little bit of sunlight exposure. People with dark skin, living in the high latitudes, would get rickets, soft bones, couldn't have any children. Your birth rate for people with vitamin D deficiency is really low. So natural selection selected for this, even though I basically have a defective gene. That's all it can do. The little thing, think about it, there's this thing on the ear, it's called Darwin's point. This is, look, some people have it, some people don't. It's a little point right here on the inner ear. It has 0 selective advantage. Yes, some people carry it, some people don't. Well, no matter how slight, even if that gives you 0.1% increased hearing ability, Darwin said it can be passed on and amplified over time. Nonsense. Think about this, right? Imagine that I have a twin brother, and we look identical except I have no toes, and he has normal feet. Okay? And we're out in the woods picking berries one day, and a bear jumps out of the woods. Which one of us gets eaten? I tell you my brother's blind? Or deaf? Or a couch potato and he doesn't know how to run? Or the bear jumped out of that side of the trail and I'm on this side of the trail? Natural selection can't even select for toelessness. Because you can survive without toes just fine. It has to be worse than that. It has to be something that, oh, by the way, because I have no toes, maybe this is how it works already, I don't go off on hunting expeditions. Because I can't run very good. That means those guys get killed and I stay back with all the girls. Who has more children? Natural selection can only select for the most profound things that have a direct effect on your ability to bear children. That's nonsense. And that's the core of Darwinism. Here's an example. This is from our Evolution of Skin and Seals video. 2 bacteria, one's mutant, one's not. Add antibiotics to the solution, who's going to win? That purple molecule is an antibiotic. Oh look, it doesn't fit, it bounces out of the hole. Sometimes it goes in, but food, those green things, have a hard time going in. But there, oh, the antibiotic goes in. And the non-mutant bacterium dies. The one that grows slowly is the one that lives. Because even though some antibiotic molecules can get into that little hole, it's a slow enough rate that the bacterium can metabolize it before it dies. Every example of antibiotic resistance in bacteria that I'm aware of is there's something broken. And almost always they grow slowly. But you can't kill them because they will suck in the poison. How is this onward and upward? How does that process lead to people? It doesn't. It's a downhill process of destruction and mayhem. It's not a positive thing that leads to amplification of great stuff over time. Let's skip that. You can if you haven't read Genetic Entropy, which I have in the copy in the back here, this is a fantastic book by John Sanford. It's an insider's look into evolutionary genetics from a former evolutionist atheist professor who's now a dynamic Christian earth creationist, amazing guy. He and I wrote a paper together. He came up with this idea called genetic entropy, and that is the idea that all things over time will run down. And he and a bunch of computer scientist friends wrote a massive computer program called Mendel's Accountant, which I reviewed in the Journal of Creation recently. I think it was in January it came out. And this Mendel's Accountant program is able to test all sorts of evolutionary scenarios using nothing but evolutionary assumptions. And they all fail. But we had a theory, we had math, we didn't have any practical applications, no real-world examples of genetic entropy. So he and I, we combed the literature, we combed the world, we found the influenza research database. You've heard of H1N1, right? The flu, H1N1 flu. You remember the 2009-2010 swine flu epidemic? That was H1N1. Well, amazingly, someone dug up a body. There's a woman who was buried in Alaska in 1918 who had died of the flu. She was buried in permafrost. So essentially her body had been in a freezer and they sequenced the flu genome out of it. That flu was a flu that killed more people than died in World War I. It was a scourge that wiped out entire communities across the world. It was horrible. But because we had a 0 point back in 1918, what we did is we took, ignore that's protein change, this is nucleotide changes in the DNA. We took a couple thousand sequenced flu viruses from samples in the 30s and 40s and 50s and into the new era where there's thousands of all period. And all I did was I counted up, okay, I'll call it 0. In 1933, how many nucleotide differences did that virus have compared to the original? And then in the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s and 80s, and we just counted them up. Excuse me? This is not supposed to be true. Natural selection is supposed to be getting rid of mutations. But it can't. There's only 3 mutations really that natural selection acts on. Those are the ones that affect the amino acid on a specific protein that our immune system interacts with. All the rest, it's like, imagine you have a car, and you try to drive your car for 50 years. Could you do it? No. Because eventually it's going to turn into a pile of rust. You can change the tires, you can change the windshield wipers, you can change the oil, okay, great. One little rust speck does nothing. But eventually the accumulation of rust will destroy your car. That's what happened to the influenza virus. Because you know what I didn't tell you was that in 2009, the human H1N1 virus went extinct. That's about 13%. After about 13% of its genome had mutated, it stopped reproducing. This is a virus that has circulated amongst people since 1917. It died. And natural selection was not able to take out these mutations. This is, in fact, using Mendel's accounting, Sanford and some other people wrote a computer simulation of RNA viruses, and they predicted exactly that before we even had this data. That was published before we published this one. This is about the same number of viral generations as the number of generations supposedly separates humans from chimpanzees. If mutations accumulate inexorably, all species are doomed to extinction. If natural selection can't remove these things, we can't last millions of years. But you never heard that in biology class. Run that by you again? You already started like half an hour ago? Right. This is about the same number of generations as supposedly separates humans and chimpanzees in the evolutionary model. And what we see here is a linear it doesn't matter how much natural selection you have. Because I mean, the flu is at war with the human immune system. The only flus that get passed on are ones that escape the immune system. That is a huge filter of natural selection. So only the best ones get passed to the next person. And yet, over time, mutations build up to the point of extinction. And we would expect this to happen, especially in long-lived mammalian species like humans and elephants. Sir? Bill?
I'm just wondering what's the difference between the bottom curve and the top curve.
The top curve is letter changes in DNA. The bottom curve is letter changes in the proteins that are being made from the DNA. Because in the genome, there's 64 combinations of those 4 letters. How do you say it? Each amino acid is coded by 3 letters of DNA. There's 64 3-letter combinations. So sometimes you can change this letter, but the amino acid doesn't change. Which is why you get more DNA changes and less amino acid changes. But eventually, something happened. In 2009, it's gone. There is no more human H1N1. I did a follow-up last year, 6 years after, 7 years after this paper. I did a follow-up study. I looked in the database, this government database, I looked at all the flus. There was no human H1N1. There is swine H1N1 still circulating amongst people. The human version is gone. Went extinct. By the way, remember how many people died in that 2009-2010 swine flu epidemic? Remember the panic? Do you remember the death toll? No, you don't. Because more people died of the normal seasonal flu than died of this scourge called swine flu. Because it's been mutating for nearly 100 years and it killed almost nobody. All right. Everybody take a deep breath. Well, that's one of my favorite lectures. Because I can watch people's brains get full and their eyes glaze over. And I say, Carter, just stop, I can't take it anymore. Okay, switch gears. Big idea. I love this. Michael Behe complimented me on this. That really tickles me. Imagine there's 2 different worlds. We have on the left the world of evolution. We have on the right the world of creation. Is it true that every bit of information you find that fits with evolutionary theory disproves creation? No? That's what the evolutionists treat it. Well, I use a problem. I use the word proof. There's no proof in science. Okay, but besides that, is it true that if I pile up a bunch of facts that are true and they do fit evolution, that means creation cannot be true? No? That's the way they treat it. Now here's the real situation. It doesn't matter how many facts you accumulate that are true. It means nothing. Einstein said, 1,000 experiments cannot prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong. Yeah, he knew science. He understood this. I was at a conference. This is where I met Michael Behe for this conference. There was a documentary that was produced by PBS about evolution. And it's shown in public school classrooms all over the country that year. And in that documentary, they mocked Christianity, which is illegal. Because the Supreme Court has said many times all education must be religiously neutral. You're not allowed to single out and mock anyone's religion. That's the law. Good luck, but that is the law. So there was a lawsuit, and they called me in as an expert witness. And the lawsuit, I don't think ever happened. It was a conference that we're trying to get ready for the lawsuit. And my job was to watch the documentary and look for errors in the science. And I found none. In fact, every single thing they said I agreed with. But then they concluded evolution is true. What in fact they did was gave what I call non-discriminating information. It's information that's true in two different theories and cannot be used to separate the two theories. But think of the power of this. This is true. 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 Evolution is true. That's what Darwin did. That was his genius. Absolute genius. The problem is Darwin avoided, as best he could, the big questions. He said, like, to talk about the origin of life, we might as well speculate about the origin of matter. That's funny, Darwin. I spoke Big Bang today. But anyway, evolutionists today, in general, do not want to talk about the difficulties with their theory. But if you want to get the difference between evolution and creation, you can't talk about natural selection. That works in both parties. You got to talk about the origin of life. You talk about the origin of complexity. You have to talk about the inability of natural selection to remove mutations. That's different. You have to talk about things that really, I'm missing a metaphor here. Cut and dry, something about a cat. I don't know. It's something that cuts to the chase. That's a good one. It cuts to the chase. It means this is something that is true or false. But those experiments are actually very hard to find. Do I have that in my talk? I don't know. I only got 15 minutes, so let's get more of that. Here we go. For about 100 years, Darwin's theory waxed supreme. Now true, up until the early 1900s, most people weren't Darwinists. But Darwin was always there. And there wasn't anything to replace Darwinism, but most people didn't really have a replacement theory. So that was the fault people felt. There was a little hiccup here in 1925. What happened in 1925? Skull's monkey trial. Most textbook producers took evolution out of their textbooks after that. Until Sputnik. Sputnik was the excuse the evolutionists used. We have to teach our kids science! Wait, whoa, you just said naturalism. But you said the word science. But what you meant was naturalism. You see how that works? Science is not naturalism. But the evolutionists assumes those things are the same, and they constantly use it that way. So the separation between science and scripture, what was that phrase you used earlier?
Intersection of faith and science.
The intersection of faith and naturalism is what that should be. Science is science. It is what it is. Here's the problem. in this illustration. If life is simple, evolution might be possible. The more complex life is, the less likely it is that evolution can explain it. What has happened over the last couple of decades? We have had an absolute explosion of our understanding of the complexity of life. Life is nothing but complexity. Therefore, evolution cannot explain it. So what do we see? We see a lot of younger professors who are not Darwinists. They're not Christians, they're not creationists, they're not creationists necessarily, but they're not Darwinists. Because they were raised in the era of complexity, and they know Darwinism doesn't explain it, so what do they say? Oh, Gaia. The universe is alive, and it just, in this complex form, just rise naturally out of the life of the universe. Or emergent complexity. Complexity is just woven into the fabric of the Big Bang. Or aliens did it. So we're seeing, again, no cohesive, there's a whole bunch of ideas, it's back like at the end of the 1800s, a whole bunch of counter ideas, but nothing that's going to replace the ruling paradigm, because none of them work either. None of those are intellectually satisfying. But Darwinism doesn't work because of complexity. Let's look at some complexity. Another clip from Evolution's Achilles heels. There's a piece of DNA. There's a polymerase zipping down. It's making copies as RNA of this piece of DNA. But notice they stop and start in different places. That one letter has been copied into 6 different RNA transcripts that are different messages. The average letter of DNA, the average letter is involved in 6 different instruction sets. One of these messages might be, how well do I see in the dark? Do I burp after I eat garlic? What's my hair color? How tall I am? I don't know, I'll make it up. Change that one letter. You just affected all those. What does natural selection focus upon? Which one? Because you just changed a whole bunch of things. What you just did is you increased the noise. And the signal is overwhelmed. Polyfunctionality is something that natural selection cannot touch. It needs a simple, clear signal or it breaks down. Hey look, that's you 56 years ago, and then you did that. And then you did that. And then you did that. And now you have between 60 and 100 trillion cells in your body. The little machines that copy the DNA are more accurate than any machine we've ever made. They only make about 1 mistake every billion letters. They have to copy 6 billion letters every time they divide. So every cell division adds to the mutational load of the individual. We will all die of mutation in human. I'm 50 this year, right? It is estimated that I have 60,000 mutations in every one of my skin cells that I was not born with. Mutation accumulation, if we don't get hit by a bus or an asteroid, mutation accumulation will kill all of us. But our bodies are amazingly designed. We essentially get every single cancer every single day. And our body almost always fixes it. You have about 1 million DNA breaks and letter oxidations in every cell in your DNA every day. 1 million per day that your body fixes, usually. It's a very elegant and very well-designed machine. Happily, our reproductive cells are partitioned early in embryonic development. The embryo is developing, the reproductive cells aren't in the embryo. They're outside the embryo, sitting on the allantois. Just out there. And after the embryo develops well enough, they walk, literally. They develop feet, and they walk, and they form a chain, like a Congo line. And they go into the embryo, they find the gonads, and they differentiate. If this has a Y chromosome, the gonads turn into testes. If there's 2 X chromosomes, the gonads turn into ovaries. After the embryo has already been developed. Why? Because those little reproductive cells are very important. We want them to undergo the fewest number of cell divisions as possible. So God engineered that into the system. If we reproduced from our skin cells, we'd be extinct many thousands of years ago. But we will die of mutation accumulation. But so will our species. Because even though those little cells are protected, they do go through cell divisions. The females estimate about 22 cell divisions. And the egg cells are inside of the ovaries. And they're protected sometimes 45 years until ovulation. They're held in a protective stasis. The male cells, it's estimated as about 32 cell divisions. And then in puberty, they start to divide like crazy. And they don't stop dividing until the man dies. Therefore, even though older women are afraid of having children because of Down syndrome, major chromosomal problems because the cells aren't dividing and they're not repairing the DNA. But in the males, the older the man gets, the more mutations he passes to his children. And it's a huge difference between the age of 15 and the age of 50. It's hundreds of mutations different. Who is the oldest father recorded in the Bible? By far, by hundreds of years, who's the oldest father recorded in the Bible? No, he's the oldest man, but his child was born way before he died. Noah, he's over 500 years old. He was genetic poison to post-flood population. Just throw it in there, just fine. Let's go over what would Adam and Eve look like. Let's do this one. You've seen the Miller-Urey experiment. Do you know what they showed? They took these simple gases, methane, ammonia, water, and hydrogen. They put it in a thing like this with some water, and they boiled it. They ran a spark through it. They cooled it off and let it collect in the bottom. They got a bunch of stuff. Did they show that you can make the building blocks of life simply? No. Most of the building blocks of life are not there. There are specifically amino acids that cannot be manufactured in this way. They don't come about through any known natural process. They must be made by living cells. Without that amino acid, all life dies. So what came first? The origin of life is, I believe, the most intractable problem for evolution. Because we have massive areas of knowledge, massive branches of science, all of which argue against the naturalistic origin of life. That is, chemistry, probability, information theory, physics. Huge branches of science, they all say no. You can get some organic molecules, that is true. Okay, fine. You can't get complex ones. Specifically, in nature, you never get chains of sugars, chains of nucleotides, chains of amino acids. Why? Because any organic chemist will tell you when you're trying to polymerize these things, you have to remove the water first. Because the water breaks sugar chains down faster than they will randomly form. Thousands of times, maybe millions of times faster. Water is a poison for polymerization reactions. You can't have a natural system without water here on Earth. So you can't get polymers, they all break down. Okay, John Sanford said this at the end of Evolution's Achilles heel. So something like, it doesn't matter. You can have cells. You can have cells with proteins, you can have cells with amino acids, you can have cells with sugars. You can give the evolutionists everything they want. You can even, I'll add this, you can even give them millions of years. Evolutionists, you can have billions of years of primordial life. And I will even give you cells with membranes, DNA, and proteins. You will still not get life. Because life is information. The basis of all life is information. And information never comes from random. In fact, randomness is the opposite of information. Information is ordered, structured, something. But information is also intangible. There's nothing in physics or chemistry or anything that says information. Information has to come from prior information. Always. And so, it's intangible in the sense that You can take information in DNA and you write out a DNA molecule, or sequence DNA and put it on a piece of paper. Or look at it in Morse code and beam a flashlight into space of your whole entire DNA code. It's the same set of information. Information is not physical. So then where does it come from if all you have is naturalism? Ah, I love that. Said all that already. This little molecule is the basis of all life as we know it. It's an ATP synthase motor. It works at almost 100% efficiency. It operates, it's actually the world's smallest electric motor. But instead of operating with electrons, it uses protons to turn. And it takes phosphate, which is almost never found in nature, and joins it with a molecule called adenosine diphosphate to make it adenosine triphosphate. ADP is never found in nature. It's too reactive. You can't get it from natural sources. ATP is ridiculous. It's super reactive. And phosphate is hardly ever found in the environment. Why would early life ever have settled on that molecule, this improbable molecule, to be the carrier of all the energy requiring processes of your cell? Even worse than that, this little machine is made of proteins. You need ATP to make proteins. What came first, ATP synthase motor or the ATP? Well, what came first? The instructions written in the DNA that require a copying mechanism that requires ATP to make the ATP motor. That's like a four-way chicken and egg problem. It ends at the very beginning of the original life argument. Another complexity argument. That is a nucleotide, part of DNA. There is a string of DNA. We're about to see another different type of polymerase, the zip by. This polymerase is going to open up the DNA strand, make a copy of it in the form of RNA, and close the DNA strand up again. Now, we're showing these nucleotides magically floating in, and we're not showing that this red thing here, this messenger RNA, gets cut and spliced in a very complicated way, which makes it really simple. So we take DNA, which is a 4-letter alphabet. We change it to RNA, which is a different 4-letter alphabet. 3 of the same letters and 1 of them different. It's a different language. But now we have to make that into a protein. That messenger RNA will probably self-destruct in about a second or so. They're really fragile. So we got to do this quickly. We take these things, or the cell takes these things, these are called transfer RNAs. At the bottom of the transfer RNA is a 3-letter code that matches up with 3 letters of the DNA. On the top is an amino acid. And this is how it works. It's a little machine. And as these match up, the amino acid pops off into a string. This is going to be a protein. But most proteins will spontaneously misfold. They will boing like a broken slinky. They need help. So these little molecules with chaperones grab onto that protein strand and prevent it from folding. And they bring it to another molecule called a chaperone. By the way, every step here is multiple doctoral dissertations and Nobel Prizes. This is complicated stuff. With the chaperone molecule, we don't even know how this thing works yet, but we know that the protein strand goes in one end, it gets folded up, and if it misfolds, this thing will chop it up into pieces. Uh-oh, there's a constraint in evolution. Evolution has to be able to pass that filter. We go from a 4-letter linear DNA alphabet to a 20-letter, 3-dimensional protein alphabet using language and translation. There is no physical connection between a letter of DNA and an amino acid. There's no chemical similarity there. There's no reason why that matches that. And yet across all the domains of life is perfect correspondence. Where does language come from? Good luck. Oh man, I don't know how far I am. I'm going to wrap up. Let me give you one more illustration. I want you to think of the smallest thing that you can see. A speck of dust. Think of the biggest thing you can see. The biggest thing that you can see that you know how big it is. A car, an elephant. Actually, it's the sun. Because we can use triangulation and geometry on Earth to calculate the size of the sun. It was first done in the 1700s. You've heard of Captain James Cook? Yeah, he was sent to Tahiti to measure the transit of Venus across the sun. And the people in England did the same thing. And because there were two places in the world, they could actually, using trigonometry, figure out how far away the sun was. That was the first measurement of the distance of the sun. Once you know how far away it was, you know how big it was too. Something about the sun and the moon having the same apparent size in the sky. It's cool stuff. Anyway, so the biggest thing you can know how big it is the sun. Think of the shortest time increment that you can notice. A blink of an eye, snap of a finger. What's the longest time increment you can notice? Something that occurs over your lifetime. The growth of a tree, the erosion of a mighty hillside. I don't know, something like that. Something that takes a very long time. Okay? If we pool all human knowledge together, we can go, and we trust these people, we can go back a few thousand years. That is all we can directly know. Now we build instruments like telescopes and atomic clocks, microscopes, to extend our range of direct measurements. But notice, not in this direction. That is, my friends, science. Outside of that is the evolution creation debate. Outside of that, you can only make deductions. You can make lucky guesses, educated guesses. You can't actually know because you can't experience it for yourself. And all the humans together cannot experience it. We cannot actually know. That's clear. I skip over Alvin Plantinga, just skip over Bill Provine. I'm going to read something from Charles Darwin. Some people believe that Charles Darwin became a Christian before he died. This is absolutely not true. It's an urban myth. This is something from his autobiography. Thus, disbelief crept over me at a very slow rate, but was at last complete. The rate was so slow I felt no distress, and never since doubted, even for a second, my conclusion was correct. I can indeed hardly see how anyone ought to wish Christianity to be true. Notice, Darwin's anti-Christian. Where was that? For if so, the plain language of the text seems to show that men who do not believe, this include my father, brother, almost all my friends, Darwin was surrounded by atheists in Victorian society, will be everlastingly punished. This is a damnable doctrine. Now, pardon the French there. But Darwin, how dare you use that word? You have no definition of that word. How dare you excoriate Christianity when that's outside of naturalism? Go crawl back under your rock, Mr. Darwin. You have no place here. You have no place at the table. And yet, he's pretending he can use words like that against other people. He continues, man who has no assured and ever-present belief in the existence of a personal God, or a future existence with retribution and reward, can have for his rule of life, as far as I can see, only to follow his impulse and instincts, which are the strongest, or see to him the best ones. You know what that's called? Hedonism. Welcome to America. A society that at its core today is based on Darwinian principles. You wonder why we're struggling with the legal system? And why judges can do things by fiat? Why they had this thing called the living constitution? That was Oliver Wendell Holmes, by the way, the so-called conservative jurist who applied evolutionary theory to the legal system. The whole legal system is evolutionary based today. And people don't know it because they don't understand the philosophical background. One of Darwin's very good friends, Adam Sedgwick. Sedgwick, by the way, named the Cambrian era. He's a very important geologist. He wrote this, Darwin toured Wales, ancient name Cambria, with Sedgwick the year before he went on the Beagle. And so decades later, Sedgwick writes this. He said, I've read your book with more pain than pleasure. Parts I read with absolute sorrow because I think I'm utterly false and grievously mischievous. You've deserved the true method of induction. Ouch. Now he's talking about, in this part of his letter, how many of you, I'm a child of the 80s, I know you, And how many of you know the Police album Ghost in the Machine? We are spirits in the two, work our spirits in the air, not in your head. Okay. That's getting at this classical, philosophical argument. Is there a ghost in the machine, or are we just a machine? So Sedgwick here, saying, were it possible, thank God it is not, to break that link between the physical and the spiritual, humanity in my mind would suffer damage if I brutalize it and sink the human race into a lower grade of degradation than any into which it has fallen, since its written records tell us of its history. He predicted the history of the 20th century, where more people died at the hands of atheistic, evolutionary-minded governments than people that ever died at the hands of governments before. And you talk about someone like Adolf Hitler, chicken feed or Chicken Little, or I don't know, I'm getting too tired of talking anymore. I can't think of any more. My metaphors get all scrambled in my head. Hitler was nothing compared to Stalin, who could sign an order before going to sleep that he knew would lead to the execution of 10,000 people and sleep soundly. How can he do that? Well, because to him, killing people is no different than cutting the grass. Mao killed a lot more people than Stalin did. And all three of these systems have one thing in common. They are based squarely on Darwinian principles. A lot more in Creation Magazine. If you bear with me, I know I'm 5 minutes over, but you don't know how long I'm going to talk anymore. If you just bear with me for another minute or two, I'm going to point to Creation Magazine and a couple of books, and I'm going to stop and do some questions for about 15 minutes. If you like what you just heard, you're going to be seeing a lot of this types of material in Creation Magazine. If you want it, we have to mail it to you. So we have to fill out a form. The form is easy, 1 year or 2 year, type in your, or write out your details, and go over there and we'll take care of you and send it to you. If you sign up here, we're going to give you a couple of gifts that you can't get if you order this on our 800 number or on creation.com. We're going to first of all sign you up for the digital version of our magazine for free. This is not designed necessarily for you to read. It's designed for you to share with other people. It's a great thing. We'll send you an email with a link, and you just forward it to anybody you want. And we say 5 people, but we don't count those. Under honor. That's there for you. We'll also sign you up for our monthly mailings. It's just prayer news updates, science updates, stuff that's happening at CMI. I know multiple people in this room get this, and I really do appreciate it. We as an information ministry, we'd fail if we didn't provide information to our peeps. So that's what we're trying to do here. If you sign up for a 1 year subscription, your subscription starts today. The magazines are on the table. You're looking at one right now. If you do a 2 year subscription, you know those you know the infomercials, right? But there's more. You know that? All right. There's more. If you sign up for a 2 year subscription, we're going to give you a couple of gifts. We're going to give you a copy of Darwin, the Board That Shook the World. Many of you have seen this. We spent about $1 million on this. It's a 1 hour National Geographic style documentary on the life of Charles Darwin. The first movie we made, in fact, we made 3 movies now. And our last movie was in the theater. That's 700 screens across the country. Woo! We actually broke even. But this was basically $1 million in the hole for us. But we did it because we wanted to. And it was a good production. You can get that with the magazine subscription. And I'm going to give you a copy of a half an hour little mini documentary we made. We took a TV camera around the college campuses. And we interviewed several hundred students. And we asked them questions like, were you raised in church? Were you ever taught anything about creation and evolution? Do you still go to church? And out of the mouths of babes, we just let them talk. It's some really good material there. Sign-up form looks like this. Pay attention to that box there, because if you turn the form over, there's a place in the back you can add more subscriptions if you like. So let's get subscriptions for people. And people do that all the time. All right, volunteer person, wherever you went this time, thank you. Those going around, if you're new to this, you might want to look at something like the Alternative Creation Competitive Edge. This is the talk that I gave last night, a talk I'll give Sunday morning at the main service. It's basically, here's creation, here's the gospel, here's why evolution doesn't work. It's just an introductory talk on the creation and evolution debate. If you're more into this, you might want to look at Evolution's Achilles heel. I know many of you in here already have this. I imagine that you'd probably give it a thumbs up. but there's a book and there's a DVD by the same title. We've actually now won 2 awards at major Christian film festivals for a documentary. I'm very proud of that because this is 3 years of my life that witnesses. I did not know that I was going to end up in an editing booth overnight, multiple nights, editing things down to the frame. Movies are hard to make. Anyway, it was a good production. In fact, at the San Antonio Independent Christian Film Festival, there were 13 documentaries submitted by Christian organizations. We were second place. We lost to Mike Huckabee. Here's Mike Conley leading the 3 Daughters of Noah. It's my attempt to show that modern genetics has discovered Adam and Eve, Noah's flood, and the Tower of Babel in the human genome. Just a couple of years ago, I gave this talk. This is actually my favorite talk I've ever given on a stage. It's called The High-Tech Cell. I'm trying here to explain the human genome, but no one understands it. So I start comparing it to a computer, and it instantly gets more powerful, more complicated than any computer we've ever even imagined. Remember my statement before, if life is simple, evolution might be possible? The genome is what destroys evolution. There's some packs of books, like the intro pack, we've got the answer book and a couple other things. There's genetic entropy and mystery of the genome. We've got some kids' books out there because everyone's got kids and grandkids or friends they might want to give gifts to. Look at Christianity for Skeptics if you haven't seen it yet. A very interesting read. We are all being assaulted by skeptics. And it would be good if we understood why they're saying what they're saying and how maybe to respond to them. That book will help you. And I'm going to leave you with 1 Peter 3:15. Brand new books. The Creation Survival Guide. I don't even have a slide for this. It's so brand new. How to graduate with your faith intact. Some really good things in here. Good advice for students. And here's a fairly new book, The Deep Time Deception by Mike Ward. I helped edit this book, so I'm very proud of this. It's a good book, just going through where millions of years came from and all sorts of cool stuff in there. If you hadn't seen this, it's a good thing to take a look at. Okay. 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you. For the reason for the hope that is in you, you do it with gentleness and respect. I tried to model that. I want to punch people in the nose. My Irish temper gets fired up when people insult me. But you know what? I can't. And I tried not to be sarcastic tonight. Try to be funny and light, but serious at the same time. We can do this. We gotta know our stuff if we're going to try it. All right, now, I talk way too long. What are we going to do? What's the schedule, man?
Let's take a few questions.
A few questions, okay. I don't want to cut out your end time. All right. Rules for questions, nothing doctrinal. I don't want to contradict what might be taught by this church. I don't necessarily know every doctrinal position. Questions ending question marks. And keep it short. You can do that? All right, lady, you're up.
Well, this has been bothering me for a long time. This is maybe a doctrinal question, so maybe you want to ignore it, but do you think God designed the universe with entropy embedded in it?
Do I think God designed the universe?
Or maybe, I guess the other thing, my son asked me this when he took physics in high school. He said, was there entropy before the fall? And I'm like, I don't know.
The answer is yes and no. Yes, the laws of thermodynamics must have been in place. Without the second law of thermodynamics, there's no friction. You can't walk. You can't eat. You can't metabolize. You would not have any body temperature. So the laws of thermodynamics must be in place. Was there entropy? That's a slightly different question. Depends upon what you mean by entropy. Here's the way I think about it. God designed the universe to last forever. And yet he knew sin was going to happen, so he didn't have to make it last forever, but he designed it to last forever. And what he did was, before sin entered the world, he was providentially upholding the world, such that Adam could never have tripped over a root and fallen off a cliff and died. It would never happen. But when sin entered the world, God basically said, And now he lets everything run according to the set of laws that he put into the universe. Think about heaven. Heaven is going to be a physical place. We're not going to be angels floating on clouds. It's a very bad view of heaven. There's going to be a recreated heaven, a recreated earth. We're going to have recreated bodies. We're going to have physical bodies. There will be food in heaven. Jesus said, I'm not going to drink the fruit of the vine until I drink with you. There's going to be a banquet in heaven, I suppose. There's going to be solid stuff. The laws of thermodynamics will be in place, but there will be any decay. I don't know how God orchestrates that. I actually just went out on a limb also in saying all that. So that's my best understanding of it. It is a fascinating, fascinating discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before the fall, what was it like compared to after the fall?
Before the fall, what was it like compared to after the fall? I don't know. I imagine not much change. I imagine that things started falling apart at the fall, but it wasn't like all of a sudden, there's torrential rains and lightning and thunderstorms and tornadoes and, the avenging horde of hyenas ran through the camp and ate everybody that day. I don't know, I'm making that just really bad. I don't know. All I know is now I'm living under the fall and I can't wait for it to be ended. And the older I get, the less I like being alive. And I'm waiting for Jesus to come back. I know He's promised us something better. I know He's promised us a world without sin, without fear, without pain and suffering. But I can't say any more than that. Probably write a book about it, but I wouldn't say any more than what I just said.
Okay, let's take one more. Mr. Z's got a question.
This is kind of related. Sorry. Sorry, I don't even know. I had another question about that chart with the bacteria degrading,
With the
virus.
The flu virus,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, the flu virus, sorry.
That's, by the way, that was published in Nucleic, in Theoretical Biology and Medical Modeling, an evolutionary journal.
Well, it almost feels like, and I'm new to this, so, it feels like maybe that's an explanation for, why Noah and those guys
Yes.
all lived longer.
Yes. When the lifespan of the patriarchs is a two-sided argument. One, there's genetics, and two, there's the environment. The two work together. Adam and Eve had perfect genetics, and they lived in a great environment. You give 1,600 years, or 10 generations, and all of a sudden your genetics aren't as perfect anymore. Then you have a massive environmental change, plus you have all the inbreeding after the flood, plus you have Noah dumping all those mutations into the post-flood population. It's a recipe for we know what causes lifespan. We are pre-programmed to die. And there's variations in those genes. Some people have the longevity genes and some people don't. We can take a mouse and change a couple letters and get it to live twice as long. We can take a mouse and get it to live twice as long by changing its diet. So between the genetics and the environment, there's profound influences upon lifespan. By the way, the first person who's going to live to 200 years old has already been born. That's what they're estimating. With advances in nutrition, and exercise physiology, and the ability to grow a new liver or a new heart in a petri dish, that's going to help a lot too. But medical science is going to greatly start extending lifespan starting really soon. It's crazy to think about, but it's pretty much true. All right, am I done?
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. You're wonderful.